Hello to everyone who is just hopping on to join the call today. We're going to give it a few more minutes, let a few more people join, and then we'll get started. And again, a big thank you to the folks hopping on. We'll give it just another minute before we get started. Alrighty, folks, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. This is why most project management platforms fall short for prefabrication management. Today, we have prefab expert and consultant Steve King leading our conversation on why platforms like Trello and Excel just don't make a lot of sense for prefab. So as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and we'll forward the recording to all registrants. You can also find all of the Evolve webinar recordings on our YouTube channel, so make sure you're following us over at Evolve MEP on YouTube. If you have any questions, please submit them using the Q&A function, and we may have time at the end of the session to take a few questions. All right, and with that, I'm handing things over to Steve.
Great. Thanks, Marina. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Good to be with you today. Today we're going to talk about some of the workflows that we commonly see, email and Excel-based workflows, along with some SmartSheet sprinkled in there, and some task management systems like Trello, things like that. So I hope this is relevant to everyone that's on the call today. So let's get started on this discussion. So just a little background on myself. I came out of the construction industry right out of high school and kind of worked my way up through the ranks, if you want to say, out in the field. So I spent a lot of time in the field. This is on the electrical side, and I know we have some mechanical and electrical contractors on the call. So I spent a lot of time in the industry, and really in the last 15 years or so, I was really just incredibly focused on the design to fabrication workflows and the transformation of our companies and the way we work in construction. So it was very clear to me back then, a long time ago, that needed to happen, and it was happening out on the West Coast, but hadn't really come up to the East Coast at that time. And so that's when I started taking a look at this and just really interested in changing construction and what was going to happen to the industry over time. So I've been in the industry for quite some time, and hopefully some of my insights will be relevant to the conversation. So I share this often. It's a key understanding that I learned a long time ago. Some of you probably already feel the same way, maybe just haven't got to that point yet. But really, it took me 10 years to figure out, just from starting out in a small way to advancing it into fabrication, being a major part of what we did every day. I really just realized that it has to become a manufacturing facility. And there's a journey to that, and a process of learning, and everything that's encompasses is kind of transforming ourselves into manufacturers, because that's not generally what we are. But I realized that was what I became after a certain amount of time. And so looking back on it now, had I understood that going in, it would have shortened the time to value, and the understanding that you absolutely have to think about different systems and methodologies in fabrication to become, truly highly productive manufacturer for your company. So this is something I learned over time that I try to share out, and you may already realize this as well. So for today, the webinar objectives for today is to take a look at a common fabrication ordering workflows, which we see in our customers all the time. So we're going to talk about that, that email and Excel-based fabrication ordering and have some conversations around that. I want to take a look at discuss the advantages because there are some advantages of those systems early on, advantages and advantages of those tools for managing the overall fabrication process. I want to take a look at and try to uncover some hidden costs that are associated with those types of systems. And so we'll talk about that, and then mapping your workflow, taking a look at what your taking a step back for a minute in the busy day-to-day business that we're doing out in the fab shop and the demand on our shop to produce more all the time, that's not going away. So at some point we have to take a look at what is our workflow, how are we implementing it, and what can we do to improve it and make it more efficient, make it better over time. So I'll take a look at that. I don't, some of you may already have a map workflow, some of you may not. So we'll just take a minute to talk about the advantages of doing such mapping. So I want to just begin with this email and Excel workflow that is really super common. I see it when I talk to our customers, and it's the primary way a lot of people still fabricate to this day. So what we're talking about here is the email request for fabrication. Really just consists of typing the body of that request in that email, filling out request forms. I've seen all kinds of fabrication request forms that get attached to emails and those type of things. And so that's really how the process begins. It's the way that your field teams, or even the design teams for that matter, send orders to the fabrication department. And this shows email, but the reality for some of us is, and it was for me too early on, was that it was not only emails, but it was also text messages and phone calls kind of sprinkled into that. No standard really that everybody used email, but whatever the foreman preferred is what they sent it in. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So step one is really just sending that email out, getting that together. So processing the request really falls on top of your fab shop manager, right? Some of you may be so busy that you have a person that processes this stuff for the fab shop manager, but in many cases it's the fab manager that receives this. He needs to read and reply to it. Often that reply is something that's not needed. Sometimes there's back and forth as well that's just simply not needed. Um, and then they have to get into flagging, categorizing, and grouping emails to be effective. Now, I guess when you're starting out, they kind of fall into your inbox and you can keep track of them that way. But more advanced guys in fabrication that have, a decent amount of fabrication going through the facility, they have some organizational structure that exists on the email, excuse me, that they need to flag and group and categorize these things into different buckets so they can make sure they're getting not losing sight of these requests. With that, this is all part of processing the request, and so there's managing documents, which I'm sure you all have to do. There's supporting information, order forms, photographs of hand sketches, whatever the case may be. These things are attached to these emails and are information required to execute on fabrication. So the fab shop manager needs to do something with that, with those documents. Finally, so the email processing is complete and all that's good to go. Now there's step four really is just about getting this information into some other spreadsheet platform, Trello, a task tracking software, SmartSheet, which is an advanced spreadsheet system that it provides some level of benefit. But whatever it is, somebody needs to fill this out, enter it into the work order, and this becomes the tracking mechanism for this particular order. Sometimes I've even seen Teams used for this type of stuff too. Um, After that, let me get rid of this thing here. After that, most of our contractors are creating what I'm calling build packages. Some call it build packages, some call it work orders or whatever you call it. It's just the assembly of all these documents that need to go out to the fab department. So printing and collating these request forms, work orders often includes material requisition, um, cut lists, drawings, QA QC checklists. I mean, I've seen many things put together in these build packages. And the interesting thing in my travels across the United States on this is that um, there's some very sophisticated build packages that include binding them into binders and really, delivering a solid package to the shop that takes a lot of work and effort to put that together for sure. Um, when you're starting out, it's not so bad. You can handle it. It's a difference of are you processing 2 orders a day or you doing 35 orders a week. There's a big difference in the output, and so uh, there's just a lot of time and effort put into putting these build packages together for sure. Delivering it to the shop. So once that's all correlated together, we're going to actually deliver that to the shop. I've seen other emails sent here as well. So you might send an email that includes the digital copy of the build package and all the other things that are here. It might be an email sent to the shop manager, or it's hand delivered down into the fab shop and posted into, sometimes it's posted on whiteboards or work order boards or whatever you have for managing this information incoming to the fab shop. So we got to deliver that all manual. This is a really, as you start to look at this is a very manual type of process. So at some point, we're going to start production on this, and we're going to need to go back and update that status on that spreadsheet system that we're using. It may go into in progress, for example. Production starts, it goes in progress. Everything's being manually updated back in the spreadsheet. And then after production starts, and even maybe before that, there's a whole series of things that are happening. Uh, Responding to phone calls, text messages, emails, looking for status updates, asking questions. Just really, there's a lot of communication that I see between the field team and the shop manager. In some cases, the shop manager is completely overwhelmed with phone calls from the field and project managers every day. And so, that's a tough job for a shop manager. They're in a tough position. It's very, they're stuck between project management and the field teams, and a lot of people pulling on those guys and girls to make that get that workflow done. So um, you can't escape that in this type of system, the amount of phone calls and things that are happening. So at some point, this will flow through production, and also want to point out that in most cases, now I haven't seen any Excel spreadsheets, and some are really quite unique and uh, have hours and hours. Uh, I mean, just building the thing is amazing. But most of them don't get down at the task level. So they stay up at a high level, they stay at a work order level, maybe even the item level, but not down into the task. And so you're really just looking at status updates here of start, finish, complete, shipped, whatever you have. It's just high level status tracking that you're seeing in these spreadsheets in most cases. Sometime production will finish, and we're going to need to close this out. So we're going to close out this order. There's some process behind closing it out, right? There's updating the spreadsheet. Maybe it's collecting the build packages from the fab shop. I've seen that a lot. There'll be hand markups on these build packages from the operators on the shop floor. Sometimes they'll take them apart. They'll disassemble the build packages, take them out of their binders, spread them all around the shop, collect them all back up, bring them back up, scan them, and upload it to some file structure somewhere as a record of some documentation that was written by hand on these build packages. This this closeout process, it can be simple and it can be um, somewhat complicated in some cases that I've seen. So in any case, we've kind of made a trip around this racetrack here, and we've kind of identified what the workflow is typically like. Now, yours could be different. It may not be anything like this, but I've seen many cases of this particular workflow that really is born from the start of fabrication. It's really when we started to fabricate early on, we had to come up with this concept. We had to build a process, and this is what we came up with. So I hope that this resonates and looks familiar to you in some ways, at least as we're going forward here in this discussion. So I want to talk a little bit about why we choose email in the first place when we're first starting out. And oftentimes it lasts for years and years. I did the same thing. It took me 2 or 3 years before I realized that this is just not going to work. And I had to find something else. So it can take some time to get to that realization, but we choose it because it just simply is effective way to communicate today, right? Everybody can do it. You can send them easily. You can do all that stuff. You don't got to train anybody, so that's a good thing. They don't they don't get upset when you tell them you have to use a new system. You say, "Oh, send it by email." They don't care. And most people look at this as it's free. It's free to send emails. It doesn't cost anything. Type it up, send it off, and there it goes into the atmosphere. Um, I don't know for most of you guys, but for me at least, when we were communicating via email, we realized that we could not ask more than one or two questions in that email. We couldn't get people to read down through an email. So it had its limitations in a sense that oftentimes you'd send out an email. We used to do it for signing off on drawings and drawing approvals. And you'd attach a whole boatload of information to an email and ask the foreman if it looks, to approve it. And 2 minutes later, you get a response saying, "Oh, it looks good." And you know that they didn't even look at it, or there was questions underneath there that weren't addressed. You got to email them back. Well, what about this? What about that? It's really just not a good platform when the volume gets to a point where it's just almost impossible to use it. But it is a fast way to get started sending orders to from to the shop from a foreman or a design team. It is, I think, why we choose it, and I think we've all been there. I certainly started the same way. Um, but it does have its disadvantages, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Maybe it should ring a bell for some of you on the call. I certainly don't want any more emails. That's just my email box is full. It's full of emails that haven't been read because you look at the title of it and you know it's just not important or you're going to ignore it. It's got junk mail in it. It's got all kinds of stuff. It gets full, and nobody I know says, "I wish I had more email." Um, and so that's the number one problem with it. We've been saturated already with the email system. But there is missing emails, and that happens often. Um, and for me, we would miss them time to time if we didn't manage our inboxes properly and do those things. And you won't realize it until they send another email saying, or a phone call saying, "Hey, how's my order doing?" I say, "Whoa, wait, what a minute, what order?" "Oh, I sent it a week ago." And then I got to look back and find it. Maybe I can find it, maybe I can't. And they'll send it again, and nobody's happy. Um, but it does require a shop manager to monitor that email throughout the day. Um, they're monitoring it, looking for new things coming in, and all that stuff is happening. Um, and it usually requires a response email, which generally is not email needed. It's an acknowledgement email that, "Hey, I got your email. I'm going to do something with it." But it's a waste of time, really. It's not needed. Um, if you have a system that can handle this. So the other big thing is just like I said before earlier is just getting all those attachments and things off of that email and getting them into some folder structure or whatever storage function you guys have um, out there to handle this. But these attachments and things they can't stay buried on that email. Um, and like I said, you definitely will get email overload at some point in time. It's just, it absolutely will happen. So the other side of it is we're going to use email to send our orders, and now we need a tracking system. So we decide to use Excel. MEP trade contractors, myself included, we have more spreadsheets than we know what to do with. They're everywhere. They're in every file, every folder. Sometimes you don't know which one's even the most current version of this thing. It gets wild, and it's wild and crazy. That's all I know about it. But um, sometimes contractors have better handle on it than others. Sometimes it's just a complete disaster. And I've lived through both of those situations. But again, this product has been around forever. It is a viable first step. There's nothing wrong with it in terms of getting a fab shop up and running, fast, quick, simple, and I did the same thing. It's widely used, and everybody knows how to use it. The question I want to ask though, is it free? Is it free to use it? We don't pay a subscription for this thing. Everybody has it, but is it free? Um, and so my experience with it has been, we had a couple people in our company that were really outrageous with this Excel, and they could make it do just about anything. I'm sure you guys have that too. If you don't, you certainly can hire somebody. There's templates, all kinds of things. It also connects, which I didn't put here in the bullet points, is it does connect with other software. Pretty much any system can work with Excel and import off these CSV files and things. So it is a viable choice at that point to start doing something with it. So you can do good with this. I mean, I did, and we did. You can do a lot of fabrication with it. It takes a lot of effort, but you can do it. My point here is, and I don't know if you're at this point or not, is it will become impossible to bear. And over time, really what that happens is, as fabrication demands grow, I don't know any MEP trade contractor owner that doesn't want more fabrication and design. So it's going to become unusable at some point in time. So there is a place where you're going to start to consider, okay, how do we scale? How are we going to make our lives easier? Is a software solution right for our company right now? And or do we need something in the near future, long term, whatever it is? It's just to start thinking about how we do things and why we do them is the important point of this message here. But as you guys know, and if you're using it, you're living through human error, which is impossible to escape. It's never going to go away, and it is what it is. And so you live through that, and it has negative impacts at times, and it just takes a lot of effort um, to keep these things up to date. One of the other things too is I think about the collaboration piece, and obviously now with you know the web-based software and Excel, you can get the stuff up in SharePoint and get it up on the cloud and share these documents, but it still is a less than adequate collaboration platform to really to when you start to look at the communications that need to happen between your VDC team, your shop team, and your field team, um, that just becomes it's real easy to see how Excel can't handle anything like that. While there's some other things like task management, Trello boards, and things like that, or SmartSheet can even do a little bit better job with that collaboration, but it's not going to be completely effective as it grows. And this just simply, I talked about it before, it just will not scale. There'll be a point in time where it's so clunky and half the time it doesn't work and there's only one person that can fix it. And that's kind of where you'll be left with at some point. So before we kind of jump into the next topic, just some key takeaways from this. You know, it is today probably for a lot of our customers the primary tool that they're using. Oftentimes, when we're talking about software with them, that's what their process is. So this is very much used today and still being used. Um, it can lead to lost orders and delays in processing. Back and forth stuff is there. One of the things that really I realized was, I mean, for me personally, I don't manage my inbox well. I don't do a great job at deleting things and organizing things, and I don't personally do a good job at it. Some other people probably do, but if that is the primary source of uh, ordering for your fab shop, that needs to be at the highest, you know, on their radar, at least the shop manager managing that inbox to be able to just even make it somewhat useful. Um, but I think the biggest takeaway here, as one of the biggest problems I hear about all the time, is that collaboration. We're working to try to improve the collaboration between the VDC shop and field teams. And so this is a big kind of sticking point for me, is I want to do everything that I can to avoid confusion and keep everybody on the same page. And so that would be one of my reasons for absolutely not using that if there were other low cost methods for me to do it. So I want to jump into time studies, and I think before we can do that, Marina, why don't you can you throw out the poll question for me?
Absolutely. So that should be visible for everybody on the webinar. And it asks, have you performed time and cost studies on your current state workflows? Great. We've got some answers rolling in. And so far, most of our audience, Steve, is saying no. No, they have not.
Mhm.
We've got 25% of responders saying no, but we want to.
Mhm. Okay, fantastic. So let's take a look at what that it consists. Obviously, it's based on just simply documenting what you do. So it's really simply here. I've got some a time study here based on a single order. Now we can easily look at the tasks and the time per task and the hourly rate that I've put in here, and those can be manipulated, you know, to fit your needs. It's just I put this together as more for a talking point on just how to look at it. So what I did was I just simply looked at what are people doing? What is everything they have to do to get this thing ready for fabrication? So, and at the top of this, the first line, create and submit prefabrication order, I didn't put a time frame to that because I just, for discussion purposes in this webinar, just considering it to be the same if you had done it in a software system, right? Somebody has to create an order and submit it somehow. So I just called it even on that one. And then I started to look at the other tasks underneath just creating and submitting it. So sorting through the email inbox, attachments, getting those things saved, filling out the orders, all these steps required, kind of that I showed in the screen earlier, kind of just putting you know, minutes to it. And at the end of all this, you come to, okay, it takes 20 minutes to get this order from the field team and get it into some way to process it through. And then you put a cost to it, right? So let's just say that fully burdened cost is $50 an hour, and you know what it is for your company, so we don't really care much about that. But the point is, figure out how much it's costing you per work order, right? So here it is, 1666 per work order, and it takes 20 minutes per order to get that done. So that was just studying the current state workflow and putting a cost to it. Because if you haven't done this, you might be surprised. Um, like I said, I've seen some huge, big build packages, especially on the mechanical side. It seems mechanical contractors have much bigger build packages. They have a lot more spools, but this time and total cost could blow up. You might be surprised what you find out when you do this. But if we take a look at that, what happens when the numbers start to grow here? So it doesn't look too bad for anybody to say you spent 20 minutes on something, but now we got to look at volume. Like what is the volume coming across our system on average, right? So we take a look at a daily calculation. So I've just put this into some perspective between 2 orders a day and 20. Like I have no idea where our customers are falling here. I would think 20 hours orders a day is a pretty good sized fabrication operation. And so there's small and large here, if you want to think of it like that. But probably everyone on this call is falling somewhere into that uh, range. And so therefore you can extrapolate the minutes and hours and come up with a cost per day. And this goes to taking a look at what other systems are, how they improve our ability to improve efficiency and create standard processes and to calculate ROI, right? I have no, you see a lot of ROI calculators out there. I'm not saying that this is an ROI calculator. What I'm saying is compare your exact cost to what the cost of software is and see if it's beneficial to do such a thing. So this is what I'm talking about here. Um, and then you look at it weekly. So you start to put this stuff into perspective. So now you fall into what is it looking like on a weekly basis. So here, just at 5 orders a day, um, you're using an entire day for somebody to process this stuff. And above that, you'll find customers or contractors or, they're hiring somebody to manage this other than the fab shop manager, because I certainly wouldn't want my fab shop manager spending 20 hours a week processing work orders when he should be working on the shop floor. I often see that happening. But so let's scale it up again and take a look at what that monthly costs look like and the yearly costs. So uh, we can argue these numbers, but the reality is you're falling somewhere in between this stuff. So you're looking at, okay, what are our costs under our current state workflow? And the things that are not considered in this, they weren't on the task list previously here, are things like material takeoffs, ordering, receiving, uh, printing paper-based workflow documents, the cost of printing those documents, which can be, I've seen it in excess of $25,000, $30,000 a year for companies to print these 11 by 17 colored images and documents by the thousands for their fab shops. So, these are things that are not included in these calculations. But the point of this is simple. Take a look at that. There's a lot of people on this call. Nobody said they've done this. And so I would look at this, encourage you to look at this and just get a baseline of where you are today. And you might find out that you're doing some things that you don't really want to do. And that's what happened to me was as it scaled up, maybe in year 3 or year 4, we looked at these things and we started asking ourselves, why are we doing this? What's the benefit or the value of doing this thing that we're doing? And so I basically looked at it as, okay, let's just stop doing things that don't provide any value and start doing things that do provide value. And when you look at that workflow, you realize that over time, there's things in there that you're going to have duplicative efforts and you're going to be doing things that you probably don't want to do, or you might even be surprised that you're even doing them in the first place. So that's the point of this conversation we're having here. Really take a look at this and get a baseline of where you are today. So with that, let's go poll question 2.
All right, that has been launched in your Zoom toolbar. You should see the question. Do you have a current state process map defining your fabrication workflow? All right, we got a few answers rolling in here. So far, everyone has answered no. Oh, we've got a now up to with a third of our audience saying yes, they have one.
Mhm.
And okay, and yep, now we're up to 75% of folks saying no, they don't have one, and a quarter saying yes, we have one.
Okay. Yeah. Um, that's not surprising, and I was one of those guys that didn't have it too. Again, so we're talking about understanding what our process costs the company to execute on, right? And process mapping, I'm not going to try to teach anybody on this call or talk too deeply about process mapping. I'm sure everybody knows what it is and can figure that out. But it really is just writing down in some way what is our process, because in most times, like I go into companies and we talk about workflow processes when we're talking about software solutions and those type of things. And what you really realize is that a software solution, even though I work for a software company, I'm not trying to sell you particularly ours or not. There's plenty of software out there. What I'm saying is that software is not the solution. It does not make good process, and it doesn't make you efficient just because you bought software. And so the important point for me about this was that until you map it, how do you know what you do? And how do you train anybody? So we end up with tribal knowledge all over the company because we have no process map, which gives us any ability to see cross-functional uh, work that happens with other teams that are waiting or needing our information from downstream, right? So what it really ends up being is a siloed working environment where one team doesn't really care about the next team because it's not their problem. They send stuff over, they do what they do because they're the VDC design team and that's what they do, but they don't understand deeply what is done in fabrication and why this is a problem for us if you give us this information this way. And so you end up with this this understanding or what people think they understand is the process for our company. But if you ask five people, they'll all tell you probably something different. Oh, how do we do this? I have no idea. Some people won't have any clue. And so that's the benefit of process mapping across the functions, the teams, and actually taking a look at it. And it takes time. It's not, look, this is not fun in any way. I don't think I've done it in many companies. I don't think there's a whole lot of fun in it. It's interesting and it creates perspective and allows us to think about improvements. But how can we improve something for which we have no process? And so what I really want, I wrote here, which is kind of really the way I thought about it, because years I thought this, and you get frustrated with people and you blame people. And so I really just come away saying, I don't blame the person, I blame the process. And so if you have good process and then you still have people problems, that's a people problem. But if you don't have process, you don't have a people problem. You have a process problem, and then you can look at the people. So for me, that was just my learning and take it for what it's worth. But that's how I looked at it. So I had to get this done. We had to look at this. Does it even make any sense what we're doing? Who knows? I don't know. So this is an example of uh, and I was on the electrical side, so this could be different. I mean, it's just what we did. And so it just swim lanes out those cross-functional teams, your design team, your shop team, your field teams, your procurement team, and then your warehousing team. And it really starts to take a look at how we actually execute the work. And in this particular case, I used the flow chart to do this, but really thinking through step-by-step processes, meeting with the people on the ground level that actually do this work. You can talk to some executives in companies. Um, they may not even know anything about this. Like they might not have any clue how any of this works. And maybe they should or they shouldn't. I don't know. But you got to get down to the people that actually execute the work to understand it, because what you think you know probably is not all true. And so this takes time. It takes a group of people getting together. It's a lean process. It's definitely I like it from that perspective. It's one of our lean initiatives that we had. Map this out, get it figured out, and this is our current state process map. This is what we do today. And then we would look at it and say, okay, what is the biggest problems that we have? Where are those problems and how can we improve them? And adjust this process map to account for those problems that happen every day. So we were more interested in root cause analysis of the problem as opposed to just fixing the problem and then fixing it again next week and next week and next week. The problem never goes away unless you fix the process to stop it from coming back. It's always going to come back. And so it's just an endless cycle of your hair on fire, putting out problems. You end up becoming a firefighter doing those type of things. So this is just an example of a process map for you guys to take a look at, but I think you get the point here. And this was tailored into our software package as well. So we changed our processes in some ways to account for the functionality that the software provided. And this is a completely digital workflow, no printing of any paperwork of any kind. But combined with my suggestion would be map out your current state, find out your problem areas. If you're looking at software now, take a look, find out what it can do to solve these problems and move forward. It's just a good exercise. I think will be well worth your time and effort spent on doing it. So just some examples of just to wrap it up here, we're at time pretty much. We can have a few questions for sure, Marina. Just some advantages of software. Again, the software platform that you pick is based on the problems you're trying to solve and your workflows. So you have to look at that stuff deeply to get the right software, excuse me, to move forward. But software is not the answer unless you understand the workflow. So that was my biggest takeaway here. Is just really kind of start to look at what you're doing and then see how you can improve, see if software can be a solution for you. Because once you put that in, then software is just going to enhance and make things easier, but it won't fix all your problems. So that's the point here. So Marina, I kind of went a little long here. Um, let's open it up for any questions that might be out there with the audience.
Yeah, and no worries. We're actually scheduled to wrap up at 1:45 today,
Oh,
so
okay.
perfect
Okay.
time. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Great.
Great. And we've got just a brief question here from the audience asking about how better software can improve the collaboration between design, shop, and field.
Yeah. So I think that's a good question. Thank you. What happens is a good software that can, for example, keep statuses updated in real time, where the information flowing through the system is not dependent upon a user to make a manual adjustment in the software, like a status change, a simple status change, or need by date change, something like that, where the information is in real time on the cloud, and so it's shared across the operational teams. The other thing is it is a single source of truth. I didn't talk about that, but in email and Excel, there is no source of truth. The email, as long as the shop manager put it together properly in the build package and everything else, is what was ordered by the field, but it doesn't mean that they did that properly, that every item was even ordered. So there is no source of truth in that type of workflow. It's only as good as the human being that actually entered that information. So software systems will help automate those processes, take away that as much human error as possible, and keep teams up to date in real time. And I think that's the important point of that. Whether you're a field guy and a foreman waiting for your delivery, or you're an executive VP of operations trying to find out if we're meeting our delivery date and on-time deliveries, all of that information is in real time. So that's one of the benefits of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve, for getting into that. And thank you to our audience for coming today. I hope that you found this information valuable. And again, we'll be following up with that recording. And you can always find more educational resources and demonstrations on the Evolve YouTube channel at Evolve MEP. Thanks, Steve,
Great,
and thanks
guys.
again to our
Have a
audience.
great day.